So please join me in welcoming Port of Seattle Commissioner Ryan Calkins.
Thank you very much, Shane. So we all heard the exhortation yesterday from Secretary Mavis to throw deep. And I think that exhortation fell on the right ears. I think this is a room full of optimists. We are up to the challenge. We are the brain trust. Our glass is not just half full, it's overflowing. When others say it can't be done, we say, why not? We're the ones who find a way to get around no and to get to yes. Climate change, to us, is not an insoluble problem to simply be managed around. It's our moonshot, our great war, our chance, and I say this without hyperbole, to change the course of history for the better. Our response to it will be the greatest source of innovation and jobs in generations. And it's no longer a question of if humanity will act, but when. For even the most ardent denier will be standing in a foot of seawater on their front lawn if we don't act. And don't get me wrong. I understand that those of us in this room can't single-handedly solve the problem of climate change. However, we are the stakeholder group necessary to show the way forward on one of the most vexing aspects of climate change: aviation-related greenhouse gas emissions. I personally joined this group the first time that I saw the chart showing projections for various sources of greenhouse gas emissions, and something jumped out to me. Whereas so many other sources begin to decline, or at least flatline, over the next 50 years, aviation-related emissions are projected to represent a larger and larger piece of the GHG pie. My thought at the time was, there has got to be a better way. And today we're here to discuss that better way. Lest any of you think that we at the Port of Seattle are just cheerleaders for your efforts, let me assure you that we have skin in the game. The Port of Seattle Commission is not afraid to take on major challenges. In fact, just last week, we initiated the most significant transformation of our waterfront in decades. We are redeveloping Terminal 5 into one of North America's premier international cargo terminals, and we will set a standard for sustainable shipping with it. We are embarking on the biggest expansion of SeaTac Airport since the 1970s, and we just cut the ribbon on one of the world's largest deep-bore tunnels, just a couple of blocks that way, including a $300 million investment by the Port of Seattle. We do big things. Last year, we committed ourselves to 10% sustainable aviation fuels at SeaTac by 2028. That is a huge goal, a huge stretch. In absolute numbers, it means we will need about 80 million gallons of SAF that first year, or roughly 40 times, my understanding, current global production. And I hope the producers in the room had their ears perk up when they heard that, because we are absolutely serious about hitting that target. SeaTac is the right place to develop the model for SAF that can be adopted by airports around the world. As we saw last night, we have a governor who is serious about climate change. In fact, he's so serious, he's willing to stake his presidency on it. We have innovative partners in agriculture and forestry willing to provide feedstocks. We have a state legislature inclined towards renewables. And our state has industry partners with expertise in renewables production and refining. We have academic partners at WSU leading the national conversation around SAF. And finally, and this cannot be overlooked, we have airline partners committed to using SAF when it becomes viable. We have outlined a plan for how we can go from 0 to 80 million gallons in a decade, and the first step is to pass a clean fuel standard in Olympia. In fact, it's the highest state legislative priority for the Port of Seattle this year. Not only will a CFS bring enormous environmental benefits, it will also unleash real economic benefits for our state. You may have noticed, maybe when you flew in or you drove up, the complete lack of oil derricks here on our lands and in our waters. Fossil fuels for Washington state are essentially a cash transfer out of state. I, for one, would much prefer that we spend our fuel dollars on locally produced biofuels than on imported fossil fuels. So let me conclude this morning by saying thank you to all of you for attending, for being the optimists, and for putting your shoulder into the goal of bringing sustainable, renewable fuels to aviation. I think, as Secretary Mabus said, we can throw deep on this.